Hey y'all, welcome back to my recap of the Fallout TV show. Today we are on episode 7. We're almost to the end, and things start to heat up, ramp up real quick here on episode 7. There's a lot to get through in this episode. It's going to take me a little bit, so buckle in, get you Nuka-Cola. Obviously, if you have not seen the show already, don't watch this because you will be spoiled. So we're just going to jump straight into it. This episode begins with a father and son who are lead farmers, who are also wearing NCR Ranger armor, and they are out in the desert, straight up just scavenging for old bullets and casing, assuming that they sell them to somebody who repurposes them into ammunition. It's a very humble living. That's the kind of jobs that you have in the wasteland. So it's interesting that they are wearing this NCR armor, and it's not exactly explained why. For one, the mask that they're wearing, the mask part of the armor, it doesn't really look like it fits. It looks like it's too big for them. So it could be scavenged armor. They could have found it and just started using it, and it's not really sized to them. Or it could just be old, or they could just not really care much to tighten it, and they're just wearing it to keep the dust out of their lungs. They could be old NCR soldiers who had to go off and do something else after Shady Sands fell, and the NCR as a whole largely fell apart. In any case, it was awesome to get to see that armor in real life and see somebody wearing it. Obviously, I would love to see it worn and used properly by somebody who is actively with the NCR and just being a total badass. But I think we have a pretty good chance of seeing that in the next season. So the father and son make their way back to their little shack after they've gone through a day of lead farming. They come back to see Cooper sitting in their dining area, eating some sort of meat. And here we get a funny little cannibalism joke. Cooper acts, well, he doesn't really say anything, but he insinuates that he's eating their daughter. Obviously, he's not. Daughter is fine. Daughter served him the food. But the reason that Cooper is there is because the father has a second son who went off to join Moldaver's crew, revolution, whatever you want to call it, and he got his younger brother wrapped up in the same gig. So Rufus, the older brother, and Tommy, the younger brother, are both working with Moldaver, and they were the ones who actually delivered the payment for bringing Wiltzig to Moldaver. So they were involved in Wiltzig's transport to Moldaver from the Enclave. Cooper killed Rufus to get the letter with these instructions from Moldaver, and he came to talk to Tommy about where Moldaver is hiding, because when he spoke to the government in last episode, I guess they didn't really know where she was either. They probably just pointed him in the direction of Rufus, who was carrying her bounty. Sorry, Wiltzig's bounty. So there's a standoff between Tommy, the younger brother, and Cooper. Tommy's obviously furious that Cooper killed his brother. Cooper does not care. All he wants to know is where Moldaver is. And so Tommy tells him. Tommy tells Cooper that Moldaver is hiding at the observatory, and Cooper, knowing the anger of a young man such as Tommy and frustration, understands that he's probably not going to be able to leave the house without Tommy attempting to kill him. Which he does. He tries to draw on him, and Cooper quickly takes him out. And then makes his leave. And basically leaves the family with no way to support themselves other than the father. So after he leaves, we are taken to yet another flashback. They get real frequent in these last couple of episodes, and that's why I love them so much, because my favorite part of the show is the flashbacks, is the pre-war. So last episode, it was revealed that Moldaver has been alive since before the war, and she was head of the communist group, or the anti-Vault-Tec group from pre-war. And so we are taken back to a flashback where Cooper is in the meeting that Moldaver is leading. She's basically discussing how the American dream is futile, how it's a lie, how there is no true way to work your way up to this dream, and the winners, the ones who thrive in American culture, are put there. They're selected. They do so by immoral means. There is no true future for America in the way that it is functioning. Cooper gets fed up with this, basically taking it as propaganda, and he tries to leave. However, Moldaver stops him and mentions to him that she knows his wife. And obviously Cooper at this point is very suspect of his wife, and he's worried about what she's been wrapped up in, especially with Vault-Tec. So I think he immediately latches onto that and lets her have the floor, basically asks her what she knows about his wife. She doesn't tell him anything specific about his wife. However, she does tell Cooper that she used to be a scientist or used to work for a scientific organization, and she, Moldaver, developed a limitless power source that she calls cold fusion. Requires no input of power. There is no fuel. It doesn't take any fuel. It just, once you activate it, it goes forever. Something that does not exist in real life as of now. But it is like the ideal form of power. And Vault-Tec bought her company after she developed cold fusion, bought the rights to cold fusion, and shelved it. They didn't use it. They basically hid it from the world and pretended like it didn't exist. This is obviously because the war that is going on between the US and China, and really everybody in the world, is all about resources, about power. They have run out of fossil fuels. They are using nuclear energy, which does create waste, and they are always looking for a way to make power more and more efficient. So this is the ultimate form of that power. But, as Charlie Whiteknife explained last episode, Vault-Tec has a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the war continues to escalate and never resolves, because that's how they sell their vaults. So Vault-Tec has bought the rights to cold fusion and hidden it from the world to ensure that the war continues and continues and continues and escalates to the point of total annihilation. And Moldaver recognizes this, and that is her entire purpose. That is her entire motive, is to get that cold fusion back, to give it to the world, and to end the resource war conflict. So her action plan with Cooper is she gives him a wireless little microphone, essentially Bluetooth, that he can link to his wife's Pip-Boy and allow him to hear through the Pip-Boy anything, use the Pip-Boy as a bug, like as a microphone. And he can listen to it remotely. So she just gives that to him without any sort of instruction or assignment. She basically says, take it as a parting gift, just keep it. If you ever want to use it, you can. So she leaves it up to him. Right after she gives him that bug, we get our classic title screen that we get every episode. This one I am specifically going to point out because it looks like a giant vat of FEV. It's a neon green, bubbly liquid. What else would it be besides FEV? I think that FEV is going to come into play later on in the episode, so that's why I'm pointing it out. Obviously, I love what they've done with the title screen in every single one of the episodes. It's awesome. So we're back to the present in Vault 4. This episode goes over what truly is going on in Vault 4, because last time Lucy discovered some pretty horrific stuff on level 12. Some frozen pregnant women, clips of those pregnant women giving birth to gulpers, some pretty messed up stuff. And obviously, she assumes that the people who are living here are responsible for this. But, as we are shown in this scene here, the Overseer and Bertie show Lucy a clip from the Hawthorne family, who lived in Vault 4, basically explaining what happened. So essentially, Vault 4 was designed to let scientists run wild with their ideas. And when they are not kept in check by people who can recognize when things are going too far, and they just want to keep going with their curiosities, things can go poorly. And they did. So they were essentially trying to combine humans with gulpers. I don't know why gulpers specifically, but they are combining humans and gulpers for the purpose of radiation resistance. We know there's a lot of creatures out there that are also resistant to radiation, so I'm not sure why they chose gulpers. I still have the running theory that they use them also as a way to regrow human limbs, but there is no evidence of that yet. But that's pretty much what these scientists were doing. And it backfired. The gulpers escaped and slaughtered almost everybody in the vault, because we still have descendants from the original dwellers that live there that are horrifically mutated, such as the Overseer. That's what happened. The Hawthorns let their experiment go too far, and it destroyed most of the original population of the vault. And then it was taken over by surface dwellers sometime around the time that Shady Sands went down. So after explaining all of this to Lucy, she apologizes, of course. But then the Overseer asks Lucy what the experiment was in her vault, in Vault 33. She tells him there was no experiment. And then they just kind of sit there and ponder that. Like, should we tell her? Should we just let her find out on her own? Because they're well aware of what happens in these vaults. They know that each vault has its own experiment. I think they just don't want to burst her bubble in this moment. Although Lucy is apologetic and remorseful for what she did, they still have to punish her for her acts. She did throw acid on somebody's face, and she did disobey orders and go to level 12. And so they take her to the main atrium. They pass by Max's room, and he sees Lucy being dragged away and immediately snaps into action. Although he wants to continue eating his popcorn and watching a waterfall, he knows that it's his time. Really poor timing here for everything. And this is honestly my least favorite kind of humor or plot point, is when the entire plot revolves around a misunderstanding. It really annoys me, but we're going to go over it anyway. Before that, though, we get a quick shot of Thaddeus, who is still on the run with Wiltzig's Heg after he left Max abandoned in his armor. He comes up to a red rocket station, and Dogmeat is still following him because he's obviously loyal to Wiltzig and he's going to follow the head wherever it goes. But Thad doesn't want him. He's annoyed with him. He wants to get rid of him. So he locks him in a freezer at the red rocket station. And of course, this is a callback to Fallout 4, because the red rocket station is where you find Dogmeat. This is a parallel of that. Thad is leaving Dogmeat at the red rocket station. By the way, Red Rocket looks fantastic. 1-to-1. They did such a good job with the set design in this show. We also get a shot of his foot, Thad's foot, after Max had stepped on it. Some pretty interesting CGI there. His toe is hanging off, the bones are sticking out. It's just as ridiculously gory as you would expect from a Fallout scene. He would be dead, by the way. He would be so dead at this point if this was real life. There's no way you're walking on a foot that looks like that. But there is lots of suspension of belief in this show, so you just kind of have to go with it. So anyway, he leaves Dogmeat at the red rocket station. He also leaves his bag and most of his belongings to lighten the load and continues his journey. Back to Vault 4, we get to see the horrific punishment that they are giving Lucy. Given that the Overseer is an original Vault resident descendant, he still has that Vault positivity and anti-violence morality to him. So their punishment is to banish Lucy and Max to the surface, assuming that the surface is so horrific and terrible that they're going to die immediately. Obviously, people such as Birdie know that they're not really going to die. They also give them a week's worth of supplies, which is hilarious. I think it's a punishment to say that they punish somebody, but they don't really want to hurt anyone. So nobody's really worried about it. The scene where the Overseer is sawing Lucy's leather cuffs, it was pretty funny. I mean, it was a bit much. They drew it out for a little too long, in my opinion. These moments of sketch humor that they bring into the show, I'm still not sold on. Usually whenever you see humor in the Fallout games, it's in the form of extreme violence. That's what's funny, is when something is extremely violent. So I really don't know how to feel about that scene. Really, the Overseer as a whole just annoys me. Maybe it's just him. I just don't like him. He bothers me. But eventually they cut off her bounds, and they deem her banished to the surface. Lucy attempts to convince them to let Max stay because he would be happier here. But again, the entire plot of this scene revolving around a misunderstanding and poor timing. Max bursts through the door in his power armor and starts lighting the place up, attacking people, throwing people off of balconies. Because obviously he thinks the worst, as on the surface, whenever you punish somebody, it's usually in the form of death. So he's doing everything he can to make sure that Lucy doesn't die. Thus, they are both kicked out, without supplies. They just kicked them out. Lucy convinces Max to return the fusion core that he used for his power armor to the vault, because without it, they're not going to have any power, and they will probably die eventually, or have to send somebody out to find it. So he returns the fusion core after much convincing, and that's a pretty big step for him, given that the power armor is everything to him. He feels like he is nothing without it, so he is willingly giving that armor up. And I know that was a scary moment for him, so I'm so proud of you, Max, for giving up that armor. He returns the core, and the vault thanks him through the chute, which is pretty funny. And then as they're leaving the faux medical facility, Lucy opens up to him about how her vault doesn't have all of the things that Vault 4 has, but she wants him to come live with her in Vault 33 after she gets her father back, after all is said and done with, because she wants him to be safe. And I think you would take this as her confession of, maybe not love, but at least affection for him, that she wants to be with him long term. And this is finally where Max confesses to Lucy that his name is not actually Titus because she has been referring to him as such ever since she met him. He explains that Titus was his knight, that he took his armor because he didn't deserve it, and he was lying about who he was because, the real reason is because he doesn't think that he himself is worth anything. He thinks that he's just an idiot, which he is, but he thinks that he's useless and that he has to pretend to be somebody else to be worthy. Whatever. Believe in yourself, have confidence. Lucy doesn't care. She's like, hey man, as far as everything goes on the surface and in the wasteland, lying about your name is not even close to the worst that you can do. So she forgives him immediately, and they move on. They're gonna continue tracking the head with the tracker and Lucy's Pip-Boy. As they take off to continue tracking the head, we are taking to Thad again with the head, and he is tracking a radio signal. So he's trying to make his way to a radio tower so that he can call the Brotherhood. So we hear him listening to wonderful classical music on his little handheld radio while he limps along with the head. As he's walking through the wasteland, we see good old Chicken Man from the beginning, who is just about to off himself. He's got a rifle in his mouth before he sees Thad walking with the head and recognizes a opportunity for business. So he runs up to Thaddeus and tells him, hey, I have this magical serum that will heal your foot and make everything better. Thad, being, I guess, desperate, but also kind of stupid, accepts this offer and follows the Chicken Man to some random house in the desert that has a bunch of these unmarked bottles of liquids. He attempts to threaten him, the Chicken Man, but Chicken Man tells him, I know which one's poison and I know which one is the actual cure. I could lie to you, give you the wrong one, but if you kill me, you're not going to know which is the right one. So Thad concedes and basically risks his life trusting this random stranger to heal his decaying foot. The Chicken Man injects Thad with a mysterious substance that he does not name. It is yellowish in color. It's not the FEV green that we're used to, but it's pretty similar to what Cooper takes, his vials, to keep him from going feral. Doesn't explain what it is, but Thad's foot magically puts itself back together in a way that could never actually happen. Again, the CGI is pretty funny. It's out there. Thad makes a comment about radiation and how the hole and how it's super radioactive, and the Chicken Man says to him, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to worry about radiation anymore. So, obviously, whatever he has given Thaddeus has now made him immune to radiation. We'll discuss him in full at the end of this episode because there is more to see. But we'll keep that in mind. So we're back to Vault 33, and Norm is continuing to serve his duty, delivering food to the prisoners. I'm still on the fence about exactly what happened here, because if you remember, at one point Norm is delivering cake, and the guard, woman that stands guard outside of the prisoners, asks for the cake to take and put in her fridge and eat for herself, and Norm gives it to her. Now we see that the prisoners have been poisoned with rat poison, that's what they suspect, and they all died. The food that is around the prisoner's dead body is just the regular cram, potatoes, and carrots that Norm has delivered to them multiple times. It doesn't look like Veronica, the prisoner guard, gave them the cake, and that they ate that right before they died. Like what I had hypothesized is that she had poisoned the cake and killed them that way. It looks like they were eating the food that Norm was delivering them. Yet Veronica is the one that is arrested by the guards. And Norm's face is very difficult to read in this scene. He doesn't look like he knew that this was going to happen, but he could also be pretending. So I don't know truly who poisoned them, if it was Norm, if it was Veronica, or if it was somebody else. However, Betty blames Norm, telling them that his words have power and meaning, and that he inspired somebody in the vault to kill the prisoners. So I'm not really sure, at the end of the day, who's responsible. But to distract the vault dwellers from what has happened, Betty takes this opportunity to send out the vault assignments to everybody. So she's going to have half the vault move to Vault 32 and live there and repopulate it, and then half of them will stay in Vault 33. So she sends out the assignments to everybody. We get a cool little montage of everyone receiving their assignment. Main ones that I'm going to focus on are Chet and Steph, who are now essentially assigned to each other as a couple with Steph's baby. They're all going to move to 32, but Norm is going to stay in 33. And this is where Chet fully rejects Norm's questions and submits himself to the illusion of Vault-Tec, despite knowing in his mind this is not what we were told that it is. He's too afraid to face the truth and look further into it and risk anything. Norm calls him a coward, and Chet tells him we're all cowards. That's why we live in vaults, and closes the door in his face. And that's the end of that. That is the end of Chet's assistance with Norm in trying to find out what happened to Vault 32 and 31. And Norm is officially on his own. So, we're taken to another flashback of Cooper. He's at his home. It's getting towards the end of the night, and Betty and their daughter are outside with the dog, and Cooper's watching them, basically contemplating whether or not he should actually plant this bug and spy on his own wife. So at first he does connect it to the Pip-Boy. He tests it, he tests listening to it, is immediately overcome with guilt. He takes the bug out of his ear, throws it in the trash, decides, I'm not going to do this, that's messed up, I need to trust my wife. However, later that night, when he's up by himself, he has a change of heart, and he realizes, I'm not going to be able to sleep at night until I know exactly what's going on, and making sure that my wife is safe, that my kid is safe, that we're all safe, and everything's not about to go to you-know-what. So he goes back outside, fetches the bug out of the trash, and he takes it. He's going to go for it. He has to commit and find out. After this, we see Cooper go to the Red Rocket, where Thaddeus just was, and he sees the blood splatter from his foot, and finds Dogmeat, who's still alive, thankfully, locked in the freezer. He lets him out, and they make their way towards Thad. He says to Dogmeat that this is the first time he actually calls Dogmeat Dogmeat. This is the first time that we hear her referred to as that. He says, I'm sorry, Dogmeat, but you ain't him. Referring to his old dog before the war, Roosevelt. Because he's a dog guy, and he misses Roosevelt, but Dogmeat just can't replace his best friend. So finally, Thad has reached the radio tower that he's been looking for and contacted the Brotherhood, and at this point, he's just waiting there with the head for the Brotherhood to arrive. So the radio host is played by Fred Armisen, who is a very well-known actor. He's also been on SNL a lot. It seems any funny character that they wanted to bring in for this, they got somebody from SNL, just like the Overseer. They have a discussion about the music that he's playing, and Thad is just trying to play along. This scene was really funny, honestly, and how they talk about the mids and the trebles and the lows, and it just sounds awful. I mean, it's 200, 300-year-old technology playing classical music. It's gonna sound terrible. It was very humorous, and it reminds me of the radio hosts in the Fallout games, such as Three Dog and Travis from Fallout 3 and 4. The radio hosts are always some of the best characters in the games. Personally, Three Dog is still my favorite. I think he's the most enjoyable to listen to.
This is Three Dog! Ow!
So they're in the middle of discussing this music when Lucy and Max walk up on them, having tracked the head with Lucy's Pip-Boy, and confront Thaddeus for the head. So Thad freaks out, he stands up and he starts attempting to shoot them, but doesn't land a single shot without his scope. And then he triggers one of DJ Carl's booby traps that he has used to keep people out of his radio tower. And this booby trap sends an arrow flying straight through his neck. Obviously this should kill him. However, he just stands there, breathing through the hole in his throat. He's not bleeding. He has no physical reaction to being shot with an arrow, and then pulls it out of his neck, and it heals back. And this is when Max clocks it and says, hey, Thad, I think you're a ghoul now. Thad freaks out, understanding that the chicken man gave him some sort of medication that did heal his foot, but also turned him into a ghoul. And so he surrenders the head to Max, understanding that the Brotherhood will kill him if they find out that he is no longer viable, not a pure human, and he runs off. So this is where I'm going to discuss Thad in general, and what I think what my take is on what happened to him. So, yes, in this show, ghouls have the ability to heal whenever they take damage. They heal very quickly. And they are resistant to radiation, of course. I think there is also the possibility that Thad is something besides a ghoul. I think it's possible he could become a super mutant instead of a ghoul. We don't know about what lore changes they have made to the super mutants in this show yet, because we haven't actually seen a living super mutant. We did see a dead one. But as far as we know, super mutants could have the same healing ability that ghouls do. Plus, the stuff that the Chicken Man gave him did look sort of like FEV and resemble FEV, and we know that FEV does cause you to become a super mutant, period. But there are also cases, such as Harold from Fallout 1 and 2 and 3, where you can become a ghoul variant, something that looks like a ghoul, from FEV. So Harold didn't become a ghoul by being exposed to too much radiation. He fell into a vat of FEV along with who later became the Master, and mutated into something else with a tree growing out of his head. So there's really technically infinite possibilities for what Thad could have become if what the Chicken Man gave him was FEV. But we don't know if it was FEV. But it kind of seems like it has to be FEV, right? Again, back to the title screen of this episode, we see the Fallout logo suspended in this bright green liquid, which is always going to be associated with FEV when it comes to Fallout. So I really don't know. They could go anywhere with Thad's condition. He could be a ghoul, he could be a ghoul-like thing, such as Harold with his own special attributes, or he could be a super mutant. And we could see in Season 2, he comes back and he's fully transitioned into a super mutant. He's giant and green and terrifying, but still has that cowardly, well, not necessarily cowardly, but he's a very withdrawn character. He's not very aggressive. He's a little guy. It would be very ironic and a great story point for him to become this massive, powerful, muscular, almost invincible monster. I'm kind of hoping that he becomes a super mutant. I think he would be the perfect character to make that transition. But we'll have to find out. We'll have to see in Season 2. So Thad runs off and leaves Lucy and Max with the head. They finally got what they're looking for. Lucy needs the head to take to get to her dad, and Max needs the head to take to the Brotherhood to be praised and complete his mission and make the Brotherhood happy. So what he does, because he just loves Lucy so much, is he takes one of the heads from the dead people from DJ Carl's traps, and he smashes it into the ground until it's unrecognizable, and then he gives Lucy Wiltzig's actual head and tells her to go to find her father. So he is going to take a fake head, a decoy, to the Brotherhood. Who knows what they're going to do to him, because he wants Lucy to be happy. Very selfless of him. So she thanks him by making out with him. This is a funny scene when they start kissing, and DJ Carl is like peeking out of the door of the radio tower. He's kind of into it. It's pretty funny. And the heads they're holding are kissing each other. It was a good kiss scene for them, after all of the weird conversations they've had with each other about that. I'm happy for them. I'm looking forward to getting to see them interact with each other in Season 2. So Lucy leaves just as the vertibirds from the Brotherhood are pulling up, and Max looks up at him, knowing that he could be executed for this. Lucy invites him to her vault afterwards, but there is a very real possibility that the Brotherhood is going to kill Max for what he has done, which is a lot. But we don't get to see what happens to him yet. That's where it cuts off for him, and we're back to Vault 33. They're making the transition. Those who were assigned to Vault 32 are officially being moved over and cut off from their neighbors in Vault 33. And then Betty announces the Overseer of 32. There is no election for this. She just chose who's going to be the Overseer. Of course, the Overseer for Vault 32 is Stephanie, who is from Vault 31. Chet immediately looks at Norm after Steph is announced the Overseer, and he looks pretty terrified. I mean, he looks very spooked, but he's too cowardly to say anything, to question it. He is just accepting his fate. Norm looks very disappointed in Chet, because he knows that he knows, but he's not going to do anything. And so they close the door on those who are going into Vault 32, and that's the last that we see of them for the rest of the show. They have been released to their new lives in 32. Meanwhile, Norm makes a getaway and runs to the Overseer's office, Betty's office, and hacks into her personal Overseer terminal. I did take a look at the terminal hacking screen, which is absolutely perfect. Well, I say perfect. There are some things that you wouldn't see in an actual hacking screen in the game. All of the words are always going to be the same number of letters, and they have a couple of like 3-letter words in here, but typically the words are always going to have similar letters in the same place so that you have to continue to find the likenesses. In this case, most of the words have a U in the second letter space. Personally, my first guess would probably be mutate, because it shares 2 letters with humans. That's how I would hack this terminal, personally. This seems to be on an easier difficulty. I think this would be easy instead of very easy. Norm appears to get it in one or two guesses. Okay, he doesn't need to use the brackets to increase the number of chances or remove duds. He just runs straight through it. So that's how you know his intelligence is really high. So he hacks the terminal, and he begins messaging the overseer of Vault 31, which at this point we have heard nothing from them. We have had no communication with anybody from Vault 31 who is actively living in Vault 31. Basically, he speaks very vaguely with the overseer, saying that the mission isn't going to plan and that he needs to get into 31, and the 31 overseer immediately accepts and tells him to go to the vault, assuming that he's talking to Betty. And Norm goes to Vault 31. He goes to the door that goes from 33 to 31. It opens for him. He walks in. And just before the episode ends, we see him walking slowly down the entrance hall, and you can hear something banging into the wall multiple times. And he has like a pretty horrified look on his face. And then that's where the episode cuts off. We don't get to see what that is until the last episode. And the last episode is a good one. Looking forward to getting to go over that one with y'all. I don't know how long it'll be. It's been pretty crazy in my life recently, so I haven't been getting these out nearly as quickly as I'd like. But I'm still enjoying making them, and I hope y'all are enjoying watching them. I appreciate all of the comments and feedback that I get on them when I do post them. Thank you guys so much for watching, as always. It's always fun to see what you guys think about it. I will see you guys for episode 8 in the next video, and we'll wrap this whole series up. Until then, peace out.